Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and other distinguished guests. I'm delighted to welcome you to this special event, Nordic Talks, the Nordic Green Model Conference. My name is Melek Hacıyeva. I am co-founder and chairperson of the board of Kitabistan Research Center. In light of COP29, I'm honored to have the opportunity to bring together 4 distinguished experts from 4 Nordic countries, from Denmark, Finland, Norway, and Sweden, to discuss the innovative and sustainable approaches that have made the Nordic region leader in environmental protection and green growth.
So, dear Melek, thank you so very much for your introductory remarks. It is wonderful to see so many people here tonight, and the fact that this venue is full with so many interested people, and I notice a lot of young people here tonight, is to a large extent due to the tremendous work that Kitabistan, in close collaboration with the embassies, has put into this project, both behind the scenes and through an extensive social media campaign around the Nordic Green Model. And Melek and her team has also conducted research, and I think we will be hearing shortly about that as well. I think your presence tonight is also a testimony to the keen interest for sustainability and climate-related issues that we can see here in Azerbaijan. And this, of course, against the background of climate-related challenges in Azerbaijan, but also the ambitious green transformation that is ongoing in this country. So why Nordic talks about the Nordic Green Model? Well, because the Nordic countries have for several decades now been at the forefront of promoting sustainability, both at a national level and on the international arena. Our nations share a common history, we share fundamental values, and we share a strong democratic tradition. And based on those pillars, we are working together to address a range of issues, and not least those regarding environment and climate. And this shared ambition, this shared Nordic ambition, is very much present in the work of the Nordic Council of Ministers that Melek mentioned. This is the official body for intergovernmental cooperation in the Nordic region, and they are supporting this event tonight. The Nordic Council of Ministers has adopted the common vision of making the Nordic region the most integrated and most sustainable by 2030. And during the ongoing Swedish presidency of the Council, we are continuing efforts to make sure that we, as a region, remain a leader in the green transition, while at the same time staying competitive and socially sustainable. Tonight you will be able to listen to leading Nordic experts describe the green transformation happening in our respective countries, and how we can partner up with Azerbaijan to promote our common goal of a greener future. So, on behalf of the Nordic embassies, I would like to wish you a very pleasant and interesting evening. Thank you very much.
I would like to introduce our experts to you. Madam Gina Spelin-Hedbrink, Head of Division for International Affairs at IVL Swedish Environmental Research Institute, Madam Tuve Kaskinen, Mr. William Leaves, Chief Advisor at Danish Energy Agency, and Mr. Perstrand Sjostad, Special Advisor for Green Transition at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Norway. So, welcome to Azerbaijan.
Thank you so much. My name is Gina. I'm very honored to be here today. It's my first time, but what I've seen so far, I'm really impressed. Thank you so much for inviting us and also listening to your speeches. My presentation starts actually a few decades ago. And in the 1990s, Stockholm capital of Sweden, had an ambition to host an event, much similar to what you will be hosting in a couple of weeks or months. But it was a different kind of event. It was the Olympics. They wanted to apply for having the Olympics in 2004. The city of Stockholm was the applicant for this. But during this, they wanted to do something different that hadn't been done before. So, they took this. This is a part of Stockholm, actually quite centrally. This is in 2002, the picture is from. And they wanted to transition this to something unique, something that's much more sustainable than ever done before. Stockholm didn't get the Olympics, Athens did. But the city continued with their plans. They took this industrial part that was actually quite ruined with pollution from chemicals, and they created something new. But the Sweden sustainability journey started way before that. And as to give you an example, the Environmental Swedish Institute, which I represent, actually was founded in 1968. And one of the reasons was that at that point, Sweden had huge challenges with air emissions and water pollution. The public officials, they felt like we need to make a change, and we need to understand the industries. We need to understand what their demands and what they say that they can do and how. But how can we speak to each other? So they created our research institute, and today we have 500 people solely focused on environmental and sustainability topics. And that's also what they did when they wanted to create this city. They gathered people from all different actors. They gathered the municipal urban planning responsibles, the local and regional traffic authorities, construction companies, real estate companies, businesses and other industries. They also gathered academia and research. And they sat down and said, how should we do this? How? And how do we make it long term? But they had two things that actually made this possible. They had a long-term ambition, a joint vision to create a part of Stockholm that would be 40% more energy efficient than ever been built before, and also without harmful substances or materials. They also had leadership. Everyone came together. And even though they had different interests, they found a way to cooperate. And this is very much how we say that the Swedish model is today. When, especially in these times where we really need to make a change and transition is crucial, we need to gather different actors from different parts of the society to make this happen. Innovation doesn't happen within just one. Of course, it can be specific innovation, but it's when you come together and work across the boundaries that you can really make transition happen. Many of Swedish cities have a goal to be climate neutral already by 2030 in their own operations. But they need to cooperate, because within a city, who's living there? Who's actually being there? And when you do this, you also need to consider the people and how do they feel about this. Energy efficiency is a large part in our buildings. How do we prevent unnecessary energy use? How do we work with much more effective mobility solutions, not only for people to move around, but also for industries? And also, how do we make the industries in different parts of our society to become climate neutral? Similar to some of my previous speakers, Sweden has also been on a journey it would be another issue, a problem that we need to manage. There was a lot of different activities on how to minimize these things. But the incentives or sticks that were used was very much put on tax on what was bad, but also first put on a tax, because then you start forcing the industries and actors to take on new measurements, finding new solutions. And when the new solutions and new ecosystems there, you can ban it. As you see, in 2002, the ban on landfill for combustible waste really decreased the waste put on landfill. So what did we do with the waste? Well, there's different things. This waste today, that was the combustible waste up here, it's actually incinerated, and today it's heating a large part of the buildings in Sweden. The district heating networks is very important for us, and it's a big reason to the lowered emissions. Another part that's interesting is the ban on organic waste. You know, all the food that you don't eat or you have to throw away. Do you know how far you can drive a car on a banana peel? And I'm not talking about the car slipping on the banana peel. You can drive 130 meters on one banana peel. In the city of Stockholm, they today collect all the organic waste from the households, together from restaurants, and they produce biogas. This biogas today fuels 300 buses in the public transportation system and a couple of thousand taxis. So in that way, we didn't only use something that was waste, we made it a resource. And that's very much the mindset of Sweden, that going from something being waste to a resource. What can I do with this? So back to this part of the city. So what happened? Did I manage? This is how it looks today. This is a very lively area today, where the social sustainability levels are high. There's an area where you have less traffic than in other parts of Stockholm. Housing prices are high, which is, from a good perspective, it's very attractive to live here. It's also a community where a lot of people are very engaged in their city and the development of this city. So did I manage to less than 40% energy? Well, both yes and no. When you try out new innovation, it's not always that you succeed at the first time. If you do, you're lucky, I would say. It's very much about failing and trying again, and fixing what you weren't able to do at the first time. So this today is actually a test bed for a new solution and going even further ahead, because even if they did something back 20 years ago, they are not finished. So what now? What does Sweden do now to reach their targets?
I would like to give the floor to Mr. Lim, first to you.
Thank you very much. Ambassadors, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, the organizers from Kazakhstan, my name is William Lim. I'm from the Danish Energy Agency, and tonight I'm going to share a story about how we intend to reach 100% green electricity in our power system by 2030, so it's 6 years from now already. So we're a small nation, we have big aspirations, and so we'll like to share about our story, and hopefully that can serve as a little bit of inspiration to Azerbaijan. So just to put a little bit of geographic context, maybe not all of you know where Denmark is and who we are, but that's where we are. We have the size of your country in terms of population, in terms of land mass. Our 2050 goals is to become completely climate neutral, and understand that the goals for Azerbaijan is to reduce your greenhouse gas emissions by 40% compared to 1990 levels. And then if we compare the largest source for electricity generation, then in the case of Denmark, 54% from wind and 90% from gas in Azerbaijan. So just to get the basics of our two countries. And so why are we interesting to listen to? And what is it we believe that we can share that is of interest to you? I think this graph says it all. Over the past 30 years, we've managed to increase our GDP, we have reduced our energy consumption, and we've reduced our greenhouse gas emissions. And the one thing that I want to focus more on is the lower line here, the greenhouse gas emissions that we've managed to reduce by 40% over a 30-year period, and how we've come to that. And that's almost exactly the same time frame that Azerbaijan is aspiring to do the same. So this is a graph that shows the energy demand of Denmark for the last 124 years. As you can see, there have been some significant events through history that has in some way, shape, or form altered the demand of energy from Denmark. Most notably, and the one that I want to point your attention to, are the oil crisis in 1970s. At that time, Denmark was heavily reliant on imported oil, and the two crises really forced Denmark to rethink its energy strategy and its energy composition. And what the politicians back then decided to do, and as history will confirm, is that we actually did not go fossil-free for a long period of time. There was at least a 20-year period where we were quite reliant on coal and natural gas, and in energy terminology, that is called a so-called coal bridge. So that was a way to transition away from oil over to coal while still maintaining the assets that we have to deliver the energy supply that is needed. The other thing I want to draw your attention to is the turquoise part, which represents the growth of renewable energy in our system. And as you can see, we had a very slow start for approximately 20 years, and then it started to grow quite rapidly from the zeros and onwards. And so that is what I'm going to dig a little deeper to in this story. So, with an oil crisis raging, not only in Denmark but throughout the world, obviously it was breaking havoc to society as we knew it. And so politicians were saying, how do we ration the scarce amount of oil that we had? And so back then, in November of 1973, the government introduced so-called car-free Sundays, to the great dismay of adults that were reliant on transportation, but to the great joy of children that were playing. So that was causing a lot of inconvenience to society, obviously, and putting a damper on economic activity. But while at the same time, we also had some very creative, innovative, visionary minds that put their efforts into figuring out how can we actually supply ourselves with electricity if we cannot use oil. So they actually started looking at how can we actually build some technology that can work. The gentleman you see up here, his name is Henrik Stigsdal, and has throughout the years become a quite significant persona in the global wind industry. He's known for his creativity, his innovative power, and has been really a driving force for technological progress in that industry. But at the same time, we also saw the politicians against the back.
And she is going to speak on the future of planet positive business in Finland, in the Nordics, and globally. Please.
Thank you so much. I'm very honored to be here. Thank you for the invitation for Kitavistan, and thank you for the ambassadors and Swedish embassy. I think this is quite a special moment for us to be able to discuss about the green and clean future. Yes, I'll talk about business, but for business, quite important thing is the question of markets. And we Nordic countries together actually count the 12th largest market globally. Like we all feel, we Finns feel that we are quite a tiny country, and I know Swedes feel that they are a little bit bigger, but they don't, as well they don't feel to be the big players. But when you take a look at these Nordic countries together, we really play an important role globally, and working together is quite important for us. But not only working with global partners, with Nordic partners, but to work together with the global community, and that's why it's so great to be here today. I'll start by introducing my organization. So it's Climate Leadership Coalition that was founded 10 years ago. On that time, there were 7 Finnish companies who came together, and they said like, hey, we don't like to be blamed for being the guilty ones for climate change. Like, we have our challenges, we will overcome them, but especially we know that we have great business opportunities, and we have those solutions that will scale globally while we are trying to mitigate climate change. And from that started a movement that now has 100 members. Most of the Finnish large companies are our members, but also companies from Sweden, Denmark and Estonia. And this network of companies works to, first of all, show that we have those business opportunities and those solutions, but also to make sure that the business environment is positive for green solutions. We all know that it's quite cheap to do that kind of old business in many ways. And sometimes it's more profitable. And the idea for our members is that we should make the business environment to be such that green solutions are the best for all of us. And we also work together with cities and universities to make sure that, yes, cities are on board. We will hear soon why from the Swedish presentation, but that the academic background is in place, so that's an important part of our work as well. Our members employ 1 million people globally, 1/4 of them in Finland, so that kind of shows as well that this network is very global, and that it's not a question of one country, but it's a shared one. Then here are the bad news when we take a look at the climate change question. 100 past years, the global emissions have been rising. Like the starting part of the path there, which is black one, for all the 20th century, global carbon emissions and greenhouse gas emissions went up. And now, within 50 years, we should get them down heavily. Like faster than ever, we have been able as a global community to do anything. So the challenge in front of us is huge. To reach the 1.5 goal might be too difficult, but it's important that we know that 1.6 degrees is better than 1.7 degrees of warming, and 1.7 is better than 1.8 degrees. So the lower we are able to put the warming to go, the better it is for people and for planet all over the world. So that's why, and that's the kind of motivation behind the companies I work with. But then there is also this motivation. World Economic Forum took a look at what are the biggest risks for the economy in the future. And in short term, there are some other topics, but if you take a look at that 10 years part there, and it's a little bit difficult to see, but it's extreme weather events, it's critical change to Earth systems, it's biodiversity loss and ecosystem collapse, it's natural resource shortages. So it's mainly the natural challenges, the questions where climate change is leading us, that are the challenging front one for the global businesses. And that's the big reason to be interested in these topics. Okay, then coming back to Finland, from where I come from, Finland has planned to be carbon neutral by 2035. So the idea is that our emissions and the amount of carbon that our forests are able to sequestrate are at the same level 2035. It's not an easy target, we don't know if we can face it, but in the same way as what we heard from Denmark, the idea is that you have to put quite heavy targets to yourself to be able to go and find them. So that's the plan we have at the moment. So So then about the question of business, is this good business and are we able to make this a good business? This is a report we published a year and a half ago.
Thank you, Melek, and let me first say it's very pleased to be here in Baku on this Nordic Talks, the first time I'm here. And also special thanks to the Swedish ambassador for taking the lead in organizing this event. I think we have to ask ourselves why we are so preoccupied with climate change. You see these weather conditions on the slide? This is just the beginning. At the same time, I think we all understand the importance of this, but we have to make the green transition the right way. We have to do it step by step. It has to be done gradually. Otherwise, it will become very difficult for both businesses, industry and households and citizens to cope through this marathon. It's not a sprint, it's a long-term marathon. At the same time, as we work towards green transition, we have to keep in mind that on the energy side, we need to take into account other concerns as well. And those are energy security, which means we cannot build down fossil fuels so quickly that we'll have shortages and deficits in the energy situation. We have to do it step by step. And we have to make sure that we have affordable energy prices. Otherwise, we will run businesses out of activity, they will go bankrupt, and we have a big burden on households. At the same time, I think that when we do this the right way, we do it gradually, we do it step by step, it will provide a lot of opportunities. So we have to take the positive approach to this. I think to simplify a bit, we have to look at some key numbers. And when it comes to the energy transition and energy mix in the world, the key figures are 82 versus 18. This means that, as we speak today, 82% of all energy consumption in the world is based on fossil fuels. 18 is either based on renewables or nuclear power. This has to change. And I think perhaps a bit optimistic scenario, but what we hope for is that we by 2050, in about 26 years' time, it will be a mix 50-50. This just illustrates things will take time, but we have to do as good as we can. I think that going forward, there are three things we need to keep in mind, which is important. One is that when it comes to climate emissions, the West, having been industrialized for the longest time, we have to continue to cut on climate emissions the best we can. At the same time, we have to try to make sure that the very legitimate wish in emerging economies for economic growth should be combined with taking care of the environment. Try to decouple economic growth from increases in fossil fuels. That is extremely important. And the third thing we had to work towards, also pointed out by my Finnish colleague, is that we need to have a breakthrough in new markets. My Danish colleague talked about that the wind market is profitable, it works well, but there are many new markets in the green sector which are immature, they're costly, and we have to have a large-scale breakthrough in order to make the change happen. In Norway, we have basically three main objectives. Firstly, as you may be aware, Norway is, like Azerbaijan, a major oil and gas producer. We're one of the biggest exporters in the world. And we plan to maintain this production towards 2050. But it will gradually go down. The curve points downwards. This is partly due to lack of reserves and partly due to other features. Understand too that also the prognosis for the petroleum industry in Azerbaijan is also pointing downwards due to lack of reserves. Secondly, we'll have to ramp up renewables.